And welcome to another episode of The Harvest with me, Carmel Fisher. On today's episode, we'll be speaking with Mr. Gabriel Diaz, CEO of Software Effective Solutions Corp, doing business as MedCana. They are trading on the OTC markets as SFWJ. Mr. Gabriel Diaz, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Excited to learn more. As a start, give us an overview of MedCana, the vision, the mission, and how you feel this fits in significantly with the global cannabis industry.
Okay, so our mission is to leverage technological expertise and strategic partnerships to cultivate, produce, and export pharmaceutical grade cannabis, both with and without THC. We have 7 companies total that I'll get into in a little bit. These companies are committed to fostering sustainable and ecological practices. We are focused on enhancing the lives of our employees. It's very important for us that we do good while doing well. And we utilize advanced agricultural technology through one of our acquisitions, Echo 2.0, that I'll talk about in a little bit, and also use our ERP software platform to ensure that we've got farm to pharmacy traceability, to ensure that we've got the technology needed to be successful. So our vision is to be a global leader in the pharmaceutical cannabis industry. We know that we have the companies, we know we have the technology, and we have the people to do this. And we will do this by leveraging our ERP platform, our technology platform, by leveraging Echo 2.0, which is our agricultural infrastructure technology, and focus on providing premium cannabis products worldwide.
Excellent. Also in your wheelhouse is a great base for operations, and that's Colombia. Tell us why you chose Colombia and what advantages does this bring to MedCana? Of course, the location rich in many things. We'd like to hear why you've chosen Colombia.
So it's a great story. From a personal perspective, I think Colombia is a jewel that has not been discovered yet. But specifically to cannabis, well, number one, the political climate is very friendly to cannabis. The current president, even though leans a little to the left, is extremely focused on getting cannabis legalized and on pushing development of agriculture. So there's the initiatives that this presidency has is to drive agricultural development and to focus on cannabis. So we're very happy to be there. The other thing about it is we're in a maturing industry. We're not jumping into an industry that is just starting. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as to why this was so interesting to me as a project and why we're so deep in it. But it's also an industry that, even though it's developed, it's not developed enough to fulfill the global needs and doesn't have the capacity to get there yet. And that maturity of industry where the regulatory climate is mature enough to where we know what the road is. There's no gray zones. Everything's been done before, but it hasn't been quite done well yet. We're in a position where it's a maturing industry that we're comfortable at the point where it's at. Cannabis has been legalized since 2016. So everything's been done. Everything's been regulated. We know what the road is. People have done it before. Again, not at a large scale at what we're looking to do, but it's there. And then we get into the advantages that give us the tremendous cost advantages. And the first one is weather. There is sun 12 hours a day year round. This matters a lot for growing a crop. There's water. Average rainfall is 74 inches of rainfall. We're actually going to be able to do irrigation of the entire production facility just with rainwater capture, which makes us very happy, ecologically sustainable, very little processing. But anyways, on top of that, we have temperature. Temperature highs are at 71 degrees with lows at 55 degrees year round. And this allows us, these 3 factors combined, allow us to focus with our 6 cannabis companies that are the growing companies. We can produce 4 cycles a year. Okay. So typically, Northern Hemisphere, you get one growing cycle or maybe two growing cycles that are 3 to 4 months apiece maximum. But because of this weather, we will be targeting 4 growth cycles a year. So that quadruples our production. The other huge advantage is labor costs. Labor costs are considerably lower. We did a very deep dive into what the average worker in that area makes per hour. On average, it's $3 an hour. We are not going to pay those wages. We're paying premiums. We want the best employees, so we're paying the 25 to 30% premium for our employees. But I personally, I was lucky enough to, at the beginning of this project, do a tour through a few U.S. cannabis production facilities in Arizona and California, and we saw workers that were making $22, $25 an hour doing the flower trimming. And that again, the cost differential is tremendous. And the last thing and most important is the people. Our labor is highly educated. Colombia's primary export crop is flowers, and cannabis is focused around flowers. That's basically what we're growing. So we have a very highly educated, highly trained labor force that's willing to work, willing to grow, willing to study, and work hard for opportunities. And it's one of the things that brings me the most joy when I'm down there and I get to talk to my people, to see the desire and the education, the commitment that they have. So those things are what make this a spectacular opportunity for us. So
you have a strategy to develop an ecosystem within the cannabis industry. Can you give us a little more detail on how that rolls out? What does that look like?
Correct. So that gets me into what the current holdings are. The licenses are the first part. Okay, we have 6 companies that are licensed to produce, process, and export cannabis and derivatives. Why 6 companies? Well, very early on, one of the things that I saw in the market, and this was a few years ago, is that with pharma grade, what we'll be producing is a specific strain that our customer will ask for. And that strain will be produced and exported. And pharmaceutical companies are very picky once they have those strains and once they have the production. And if it is certified pharmaceutical grade production, their next step is acquisition. Many times it will be acquisition. We've seen it happen a few times in Colombia. And so by keeping the license separate, we have the ability to, if we wanted to, spin off these companies to specific customers while continuing to do business with other customers. So we can segment production by companies. The 7th company that's related to cannabis is able to register genetic varietals. This means that we will develop our own varietals, register them, and then be able to supply them to our other 6 companies. And if and when we do sell any of those 6 companies, we will continue to be the supplier of the genetic material. So that gives us a tremendous amount of opportunity because we will always continue to have recurring revenue from operations, even if we sell those operations. The other important thing is we acquired Token ERP company. This company has the wireframe and the software that will allow us to manage the growth process from seed to pharma, and to be able to manage it accurately and manage it well. But it's not only that. We saw an opportunity in the market for a platform like this. And so even though we're developing it as an internal product, we will be launching that as an external product. And then, of course, is the last acquisition that was Eco2O. And Eco2O, we were very lucky to be able to take a majority stake in this company because this was the company that was quoting us all of our infrastructure for our construction. And we're currently planning on building 19 acres of greenhouses, which is tremendous. So by being able to acquire this company, we were able to save a substantial amount of money, close to between 1.5 and $1.8 million on the construction costs. But it wasn't just that drove us to that. We're seeing climate change. We're seeing a humongous migration in the agricultural space where there's no labor. This is global. And so what's happening is technology is finally seeping into agriculture. And this is in the way of greenhouses to control some of the environment, irrigation systems to control nutrition for plants, not just the water, but also provide the nutrition for the plants, and be able to apply sensors that will reduce labor costs. And so by seeing this and this trend, we dove directly into this opportunity, and we've been very lucky that we've been very successful, and we've already had a couple of home runs. When we put it all together, we have the ability to manage our own growth, be able to scale, and then be able to spin off some of our core products. We're very happy about this ecosystem that's being created.
Wonderful. And has the efficacy been tested of the viability of the ecosystem at this point?
Yes, it has. So Echo 2.0 has already had a couple of large wins. We landed the largest producer of flower seedlings in the world is an Israeli company. They have a very large operation in Colombia. We've already built out 3 acres of greenhouses for them and managed irrigation systems and managed some of their systems, including sensors, temperature sensors, humidity sensors. So that is already an ongoing. We've got a few other very large producers in the flower space, because that's the majority of the customers out there, but we've got a few cannabis customers as well. So that model has been proven and has been operating for the past 8 months to a year with excellent results. On the cannabis stage, we have a very large facility. We have 100 acres of land, and we have done a tremendous amount of studies to make sure that we're going to do things right. So we've gone through ecological, hydrological, geological, and a bunch of cal analysis that led us to understand exactly what we have and what we're going to be able to do. But along those lines of doing all those analyses, we also discovered that we have 5 microclimates in the area. This can affect the crops in a very particular way. So we have been testing. We built greenhouses small greenhouses in each of those microclimate, and ran test crops for 3 cycles now to make sure that we are in the right place, that we have the right pests, that we don't have the pests, that we don't have the humidity issues. And so far, everything has tested positive and gone extremely well. And at this point, we are in our first production run of 1/2 acre of greenhouses that we've got set up. And this is it's a full run of production. It is sold as well, so we're very happy about that. But this is not yet full operations. We want to do this to train our staff, to tweak our systems, to make sure everything's ready to go for when we do start full production.
Wonderful. So, in recent interviews that I explored from yourself, MedCana, there was talk of not necessarily infiltrating the US market at this point. You were looking at Europe, and of course, you're in Colombia for production, but how has that been going in terms of locations and where you're trying to infiltrate?
Great. And this is where I think my answers are going a little bit long, but it's worth telling you guys the stories. I came out of the telecommunications industry when the industry was born through deregulation in the late 90s. There were hundreds of companies in the US that popped up, were funded heavily through publicly traded companies. And I saw a humongous amount of those companies fail because of a lack of experience in the industry, because it was a new industry. So what does that have to do with cannabis? Well, when I looked at this project 2.5 years ago, I saw the exact same thing happening. I saw the first wave of companies that had raised a tremendous amount of capital, built facilities that were not pharmaceutical compliant, because a lot of these things were not these regulations were not created yet. And there was a lot of taking money on the back end. There was a lot of the investors that cashed out, just ran out with the money. And that's exactly what I had seen in telecom. So I saw the opportunity for the second wave, which is when I came in telecommunications and built my first company in the late 90s, and then built my second company after that. I saw the exact same happening in this industry. And I have to tell you, in this past year and a half that we've been operating, I can tell you we were right. I was right. Sounds a little arrogant, but I was right. What we've seen in Colombia was a tremendous amount of investment come in. Everybody builds a lot of the profit taking. Nothing got executed. We're now in a position where we have the engineers that have learned the hard lessons that failed because they didn't understand the global market, that failed because they didn't understand demand, because it wasn't there, because there was profit taking. So many experiences that we're able to whittle it down. But what happens is the global market demand continues to grow 30% year over year, right? And a lot of these first wave companies in Colombia, even though they may still be operating, they're not certified for pharma. And that takes them out of the running. And in order for them to get certified for pharma, they have to go raise another round of funding to redo their infrastructure to get recertified. We're in a position where we're building from scratch with the certification entity side by side with us so that we know we're guaranteed to be certified globally. And that demand continues to grow to the point that, again, I'll tell you a little bit more personal. I've always been on this more on the sales side, and later I jumped into the ops side. So sales worried me, right? Demand worried me. Well, we're in a position right now where we've been approached by multiple clients asking for production. And that's because they know that we're going to be certified, that we'll have the pharma certs, and they know that we'll have the capability to produce. So I'm very happy with that global demand. And that's actually our first focus of going to market. Obviously, the US, we can't be in the US yet. We have countries that we can export to now. However, we're aiming for those countries that have the hardest level of certifications. Once we do that, and for example, that is Germany in Europe. And that is the certification grade we're aiming for, so that we can then export to any other country in Europe and any other country where it's legal. So our focus initially is those international markets. We feel we can be extremely profitable in those markets while we wait for the US.
So that then leads me into my next question. Why MedCana? What sets you apart from any of the other players in the pharmaceutical cannabis space?
Really good question. If there's one thing as to why MedCana, it gets back to where we are producing. Again, those benefits that we have are tremendous. Being able to grow 4 seasons with the labor costs, with the climate, with the daylight, with the water, puts us at a production cost between 10 to 15 times less than the US, which is mind-blowing. When you don't have the control environment, we don't have to cool the facility in the summer and warm it in the winter, put shade in the summer and put light in the winter. When you don't have those labor costs, when you don't have all those things, they add up, and multiply that times 2 to 4 crops a year more, you're looking at some tremendous benefits. It's also doing business in a country that is incredibly well educated, where the engineers that we have on staff, the chemists that we have on staff are world class. And so the people and the place make a tremendous difference. We feel that we can also scale, not just in Colombia with the infrastructure that we have. Again, with that ecosystem, we feel we can scale to other countries where we're going to have very similar advantages with the weather, with the labor, but we are in a position to be able not just to do extremely well where we're at, but also be able to expand and scale.
Excellent. So looking at the projected growth for global pharmaceutical cannabis market, right? It's pretty substantial. What does MedCana plan to do to capitalize on that growth?
So the first portion is this insanely aggressive project that, well, when somebody says 19 acres, it sounds like a lot. When you see an acre of greenhouses, it floors you the first couple times you see that. So because of the demand, we've also changed a few things in our business plan. Okay. And the most important change that we've done is we want to capitalize on that demand and be able to fulfill those markets. And right now, the primary demand is for, well, for the pharmaceutical space, is for a high quality, very potent, but also very, very high quality bud to be able to smoke. We have proven through the year and a half that we've done testing that we are producing the most vibrant, beautiful, and potent product. It's far better than anything that is in Europe. It's at this point, especially anything that is grown indoors. We're growing outdoors with greenhouses, but we still have access to that environment, and that environment gives our plants and gives the flowers the ability to really become what the flowers should be. I know that's sounds kind of crazy, but when you have a plant swinging in the wind and you have the temperature changes and you have all these things, the plant develops into the perfect specimen of the plant. That doesn't happen in a controlled environment all the time. So we know we can produce this extremely high quality product that is ready for export. And so because of that, we are focusing on full production of the 19 acres. And then we're going to do our extraction laboratory. And that was supposed to be simultaneous. The extraction is a phenomenal, again, it's a certified project that is globally certified. We get certified at once in 24 countries. But it is a $2.5 million investment to $3 million investment that's going to maybe slow us down on being able to capitalize on capturing that market right now and capturing those long-term clients.
Awesome. Let's talk about compliance. And of course, there's compliance with international quality standards, right? For pharmaceutical grade cannabis products. How does MedCana's aim to stay on top of those compliance issues or requirements?
So the nice thing about where we're at now in the industry locally is that compliance has all been hashed out and determined. There's no gray areas. There's nothing. What we're seeing internationally as well is those, again, countries have established their compliance requirements and they're very clear. The biggest advantage that we have is that the entire project is developed with compliance and with certifications as a priority. And so the entity that will be certifying us is working with our civil engineers, is working with our agriculture engineers, is working with our process department to make sure that as we grow, we don't forget about anything. And that makes it so much easier. I can't tell you how much easier it is to do that than to build out 10 acres of greenhouses and realized your facility was set up wrong and now you have to tear it down and build it again. And that's really what's happened to a lot of our competitors, because they were in this industry at too early of a stage, and then the compliance and regulations got changed on them or got implemented. And we have that tremendous advantage. It happens so many times when a company implements it in retrospect, you have to forklift a lot of your systems out and get new systems in, or you're not going to be compliant.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. And I love the working in tandem with that certification department, so to speak. And then there's always just the chance, that regulations get updated or upended or changed, as is the nature of many of the beasts we currently live with. How agile do you think you are as a company to stay relevant with any changes?
Great. We're in a really good position, and that comes to, again, not to brag, but the people that we have working for us are phenomenal. These are our attorneys worked side by side with regulations as they were being developed. Our chemists have consulted in Ecuador and Guyana for their regulatory, for the government asked them to consult for the regulatory for legalization of cannabis and helping create the framework. So we're very deep in that segment. We feel we can not only react, but we can also anticipate what's going to happen in those markets. And that ability to anticipate is definitely going to give us some growth opportunities in other markets as well.
Keyword anticipate. What can
Yes.
investors look forward to in the coming quarters?
It's an industry that's being born. The coming quarters is build for us. We need to get this project off the ground. We need to get, well, the project is off the ground, but there's a lot more that we have to lift off the ground. So it's build. We have seen some opportunities pop up. We deeply explored an opportunity in Argentina last year. Unfortunately, the decline of the Argentinian peso and turbulence with political turbulence led us to step back a little bit. But we see that there is going to be opportunities like that in other countries for production, and there's certainly going to be opportunities in other countries for distribution.
What about opportunities to expand beyond cannabis into other agricultural sectors? Do those exist for you?
Yes, absolutely. With Echo 2.0, that is a natural expansion. We are not only expanding into flowers, we're expanding into anything that grows in a greenhouse, anything that needs nutrients through an irrigation system. So that company in itself is the opportunities are tremendous. We know that a small farmer that sets up a small irrigation system that we distribute can triple his crop. Okay, they can triple their crop by implementing irrigation. Why? Because now they're timing. Now they're able to put the nutrients through the irrigation system. And these are systems that I'm talking about, a 4,000 square foot farm, right? So just within that segment, for example, we've done some work with the government already and with ONGs to help farmers increase their crops. That whole vertical at the very bottom, but then you get into the medium producers, and then you get into the large producers of anything. So this is why Echo 2.0 was such an interesting acquisition. But definitely see, as far as the cannabis and the growth into that space and other products that are coming down the line, we are lucky enough to have, as our senior chemist, 2 PhDs that are published, highly respected in academia. They're professors at the top 2 universities in the country, and they see what's coming next. Long term, we see absolutely delving into not just cannabis as a product, but cannabis as a cure, running trials, developing medicines, developing treatments. And so we see that path, but we also see the path of the psilocybins and all of these things that are coming out that are cutting edge right now, that we're seeing amazing therapies come out that were unheard of 10 years ago. And so we certainly will stay on top of that. We'll have the capability to be at the very forefront of it because we'll have the technology to implement for the production. So absolutely, that is something that excites me. It's not just building it once, it's the ability to expand and to go into other markets.
For sure, starting with the end in mind, but staying focused on the first few steps, right? Which is the flower, making sure the environments are conducive to consistent quality growth of that. So talk to us about the genetics, just to remind us about your genetic approach, and how you kind of ensure that you have something of quality and something unique in terms of your flower.
So that's a really good question, because one of the things that we didn't want to do is start multiple fronts at once and start multiple R&D developments at once. Getting the right genetics is a process that takes quite a while. Okay, it's making sure that they're producing what the client needs, making sure that the environment is a correct environment for that production, and then making sure you can multiply them. Those processes, even though we have the right people in place, take quite a while. And so what we've done to kickstart right now is we have gone with proven genetic varietals that are already being exported and are being sold. And so again, our client is already driving that genetics. But that is a front that we're opening very soon. As soon as we start operating, we will start testing varietals internally to develop our own varietals. But again, to me, it was very, very important to make sure, especially this is a publicly traded company. I have a responsibility to my shareholders, right? What is my primary responsibility? Let's get revenue and let's get profits. And once we've done that, we can start innovating and going and taking not chances because it's going to happen, but we lessen that risk and we get to profitability a lot faster.
100%. So in closing, tell us, how you see MedCana and the role they play in the cannabis industry. How will they shape the future of this global industry that's ever growing? And then to close off the interview, highlight 3 important takeaways for our investors and listeners out there.
So MedCana will be a global contender. Okay. It sounds a little too arrogant to say that we will be the best in the world. But I believe we have what it takes to be a very large player in the pharmaceutical industry. I believe we have everything in place to be successful. And so that is the most important thing. This first stage, even though it's a tremendous amount of build and it's a lot of investment for the infrastructure, this is infrastructure that's going to last 15 years. We're going with greenhouses that have aluminum galvanized alloys that last 15 years. Our typical plastic for a greenhouse lasts 3 to 4 years. Our combination of plastics lasts 5 to 7 years. We know that we're investing for the long run to get this company very profitable. And so that's MedCana. We know we will be a contender. For the investors, the key takeaway is I think it's going to be a wonderful ride. We are the company that executes. We are the company that will put the numbers where they need to be and the sales where they need to be and the production where it needs to be. So it's going to be a phenomenal ride. I would say sit tight, hang on, and just come along for the ride, guys.
It's all going to end well, according to CEO Gabriel Diaz from Software Effective Solutions Corp on OTC markets as SFWJ. Thank you so much, Mr. Diaz. This was a fantastic conversation.
That's it for The Harvest, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.